Shield Maiden. She remembered herself. He reached out to her, and her hand automatically lifted. They clasped hands for a moment. His presence was overwhelming. Wanda knew nothing of magic, but she could feel him in the air all around her. It was like standing in front of a giant cruise ship right before it ran you over in your little rowboat. Massive, all-encompassing, unstoppable. She shivered a little, unable to help it. "Do not touch him," Laserwolf said aloud, snapping her out of her trance. Shield Maiden coughed, stepping back. "Well, let's get right to it then, shall we? I promised you a train." He leaned against the side of a train car. "Then I'm off to Egypt and bits of Africa. I can't stand colder climates, you know," he told Shield Maiden, giving his head a scratch. His golden eyes gave off a shimmering mist and flicked towards Laserwolf when he made to move forward. "That's close enough, mongrel," he said sharply. "If I see even a single one of your little hidden panels pop open to shoot or tranquilize me, I'll send your friend screaming into the endless void of outer space." He lifted a hand, and a palm-sized black spot appeared there. To Shield Maiden's horror, she saw stars inside. "I must stand on the track," Laserwolf insisted, giving Dr. Galaxy a wide berth, "to stop the train." "How will you keep it from sucking in everything around it?" Shield Maiden wanted to know, stepping back so she wouldn't be hit by the train when it arrived. "The surface of my portals are like water. It prevents suction until you step through." Dr. Galaxy smiled at the astute question. "If you'd like to visit Saturn, please be my guest." He lifted his hands. "Get back," Laserwolf said urgently. Shield Maiden hopped backward off the track just as the tear began to form. A horrific, overwhelming view of the sixth planet of the solar system appeared. Shield Maiden got immense vertigo and staggered backward, holding her head. It was an unnatural, angled view of something she didn't want to see. Stars and gases swirled this way and that, the endless dancing emptiness of outer space. She moaned, holding her head in her hands. She fell to one knee as her stomach did flip-flops and her sense of balance tilted wildly. It wasn't just the hole itself, it was him. Dr. Galaxy's grasp on space and time was making her sick. "Yes, you probably shouldn't look directly into it." Dr. Galaxy smirked a little, golden eyes growing brighter and brighter. "Now then, where did I leave it?" The portal ripped wider and wider like tearing paper, angry red veins splitting off the hole in space-time. Oh, there it... A massive train came screaming onto the scene, blasting down onto the tracks and squealing with its wheels. Laserwolf widened his stance and held out his arm. It smashed into him, blasting out the front cabin windows. His handholds bent the frame inward, and he was sent crashing backwards, splitting the track as he went. Wood flew in all directions as rung after rung gave way as he tried to bring the cars to a stop. Its sheer weight propelled it forward and out the portal like a gigantic silver snake. Shield Maiden lifted her shield as shards of metal and ice went in all directions. Glass fogged and cracked, some of the windows shattering as it re-entered the atmosphere from the icy cold of space. 5, 8, 11 cars slipped onto the unoccupied track. Laserwolf's jetpack ignited and slowly revved up its power as he tried to bring the machinery to a slow and safe stop. By the time the icy disaster came to a halt, he was over 600 feet away down the track. Panting from the sheer spectacle, Shield Maiden stayed hidden under her shield as ice and flecks of steel popped and crackled in front of her. The entire thing hissed and steamed with extreme cold. She slowly looked up as she felt the portal to Saturn being closed. Then she saw them. Figures. Dozens of them in every car. Her hand slowly lifted to her mouth in horror, frozen in place. Some of them were sitting and others were standing. Some of them were bent forward, others clutching at each other. She couldn't see any detail, which was a blessing, because of the fogged windows, but they were all there. Every passenger of the missing train from 5 months ago was still there. All dead. Shield Maiden slowly stood, her mouth a little agape. Dr. Galaxy appeared beside her, having stepped into one portal and out another on her side of the tracks. "It's like an icy time capsule, isn't it?" he marveled, looking down the track at Laserwolf as he rocketed back to where they stood. "Tell the metal mongrel that if he crosses me again, next time it will be 10 trains. Surely 100 deaths for his own hubris is enough." "He didn't kill those people. You did," Shield Maiden whispered softly, unable to take her eyes off the steaming train. Dr. Galaxy looked up at her with a frown that slowly morphed into a puzzled smile. "Well, you have a spine. At least there's that," he said, gesturing lightly. A new doorway opened, and Shield Maiden saw the dusty pyramids of Giza beyond. "Let's hope we don't meet again, dear girl. You seem to be doing a good job so far in the city. I would hate to send you to Saturn." With that, he stepped through and was gone with a pop of magic. Shield Maiden felt the heavy, overwhelming presence pass like an evaporated storm cloud. It was like suddenly remembering to breathe. She felt the drop of sweat go down her temple. No wonder not even Laserwolf could topple Dr. Galaxy. "He is gone. What did he tell you?" Laserwolf wanted to know, landing next to her. His jetpack had been too loud for him to overhear. "He said next time it'll be 10 trains. Shield Maiden folded her arms, turning towards the train. "What a monster," she whispered. Laserwolf said nothing. "Well, anything?" "I scanned for life signs as I returned from the far end of the train. There are no survivors among the passengers or crew," Laserwolf said robotically, turning towards the caboose. "When Gel Girl tried to stop the train, she was pulling on it from behind to save what she could, but she was not strong enough to halt its momentum into the portal." Laserwolf and Shield Maiden walked quickly around the back of the train, and there they found her, frozen in place. "Oh my God!" Shield Maiden shrieked, both hands jumping to her mouth. Gel Girl was a gooey shapeshifter. She'd morphed herself into a mini-hooked parachute sort of shape and had tried to grab anything with dozens of other tendrils. Like 100 octopus arms, they were all curled in all directions, like a chaotic tentacle monster. They could see her face, frozen in a teeth-gritted expression of effort. She glittered like an ice sculpture, blue with flecks of silver all throughout her misshapen body. "Oh, Laser, I'm so sorry," Shield Maiden said, sympathetically touching his forearm as he stared at the scene. He said nothing and did not move for a long time. Shield Maiden imagined that his pilot was suffering and not touching the controls of his giant robot persona. She gave him a moment, stepping back and looking away, folding her arms under the weight of her breasts. The chilly breeze turned colder as the sun went over the horizon and night proper began. Gel Girl was splattered and frozen across the entire back of the train, spreading herself so thin they could see the silvery surface of the train itself through her body. As they watched, the tip of one of the reaching tentacles popped off and shattered on the cruel ground. At last, the unmoving metal hero seemed to come to life again. "I must extract her body before curious civilians arrive." A small ray gun sprang free from its hidden compartment in his forearm. Aiming carefully, he knelt down and used it to begin cutting pieces of Gel Girl free. Please find a container, he told her. Shield Maiden obeyed, not sure what else to do. She came back with an empty metal crate that she'd found in some piles of rubbish not far away. Hopefully it was big enough. She found Laserwolf looking into Gel Girl's face. The sheer heat of the laser cutting her apart made the main body drip down the front. She looked like she was crying. Shield Maiden's heart sank. She started to say, I'll patrol the length of the train. It's not safe for anyone to just wander on board. He said nothing in response. I'll leave you to your work. She sighed softly, touching his shoulder as she went by. She walked the length of the train in silence, trying not to look towards the frozen shadows inside the train. Most of them probably didn't even see it coming, going about their usual day on the train, reading, talking, playing on their phones, and then silence and instant body-freezing death. Had they suffered? She tried to think back to her school days and the age-old question of how long a person could survive in outer space with no spacesuit. What was it? 10 seconds? 15? At the very most? Shield Maiden shivered when a thin layer of ice fell away and shattered on the ground in front of her. She glanced over her shoulder at Laserwolf, now a great distance away, working diligently. Poor guy. She heaved a big sigh, not sure what else she should really be doing. A pair of doors were open on one of the front cars. She stopped, frowning. A mess of frozen glass and bits of ice were all over the ground. She squatted, touching them, then looked up at the train car. What the... she murmured. Shield Maiden could hear something shuffling around on the train. She swallowed a little, squaring her shoulders. Moving slowly over the shattered glass and ice, she stepped on board and leaned. A massive black figure with pointed ears was leaning over a group of huddled dead. He was sniffing at them, poking their shoulders, and breaking off bits of hair. Yes, hair from the scalp of a corpse. Good, good, he mumbled to himself. Shield Maiden stared at him. There was a light crunching sound, and he dropped something into a tiny waiting jar. The finger of a child, yes, he whispered, his breath a raw cloud of cold as he stuffed it away in a waiting bag. He crawled forward on all fours, much too tall to stand upright in the train car. He sniffed the next person, leaning back and forth to look for anything of use. Hey! Shield Maiden shouted angrily, making him whirl around. What do you think you're doing? She said, lifting her shield in case he decided to spring on her. He looked genuinely surprised to see her. Shield Lady, he said. Shield Maiden, she corrected. Slander, he said with a leer, his black nose working itself. She stared at him. No time, woman. These bodies will thaw and start rotting in a few hours. I have to take what I can right now. Rare ingredients from the dead for Anubis. That's enough. Stop there. She started forward, limbering up her free arm with a roll of her shoulders. He fished into his bag, slipping a line of powder across the train car between them. No time, he said, turning busily away. Shield Maiden reeled back and swung with all her might. She crashed into a barrier that she couldn't see, reeling and falling on her butt. Brick dust, he said over his shoulder, breaking off another child's finger and dropping it into a jar. Those that mean Anubis ill can't cross it. Simple magic, very simple. American magic, if you can believe it. He got a pair of pliers and less than gently propped someone's mouth open. She winced when he started pulling teeth out of a dead man's head. Who are you? Shield Maiden demanded, pressing her hands against what felt like compressed air you might feel in a balloon. She tried to scuff the line of brick dust with her boot, but it wouldn't budge. Call Anubis Anubis. Everyone does. Not many people practice dead magic anymore, he said conversationally, dropping another tooth into the waiting jar. Not a god, just... Anubis is complicated, you shouldn't ask. He gestured to himself for a moment. Shield Maiden clanked her shield against one of the bars of the subway car several times while he worked, as though to throw him off of his concentration, but he didn't care. "Stop that. You're annoying. You're annoying to Anubis," he said shortly, turning to the other side of the aisle and sniffing at a teenage girl that was frozen with her headset on. He plucked the headset off, tossing it over his shoulder to get a better look at her. Condensation from the warm air outside was already starting to make her look ghastly. Shield Maiden kept clanking her shield against the bars, making the train car ring loudly. 100 dead. They're just bodies. They're not people anymore. Plenty of ingredients for Anubis. He chuffed a little, his ears perking at the sound only he could hear from a dead fat man who looked asleep with his arms folded. He tilted his head one way and then the other. Anubis carefully plucked out his eye, putting it in a little pouch for safekeeping. He reached for the face of a little girl next to him, but stopped, his ears turned backward. He looked to one side behind himself. "What's that?" he said. A line of blue light lanced from the sky. Laser Wolf had heard Shield Maiden's banging sounds. The laser blew out one of the windows, blowing the line of brick dust away. Shield Maiden saw a small set of glowing runes blow slowly into the air and dissolve. She charged over the barrier and into the Jackal Man's face. He yapped like a dog tossed against the far door. He turned and kicked it open, hopping between train cars and onto the roof. Laser Wolf followed. Shield Maiden wheeled around and ran out the way she'd come. Leaping to the top of the train, she landed gracefully and charged after him while Laser Wolf followed from the sky. Laser Wolf didn't dare fire on the train itself. He would have to catch the meta creature and force him off of it. Jetpack igniting, he dove at Anubis with all speed. The jackal saw him coming and leapt high, somersaulting forward and landing on all fours. He heard Shield Maiden running up behind him and took off at full speed towards the front of the train. Laser Wolf wheeled around and dove again, massive metal hands reaching. Anubis thrust out a hand. A wild array of runes danced around in the air, and Laser Wolf's jetpack suddenly filled with insects. They buzzed and threw their tiny bodies into the exhaust vents and pilot lights, stutter-stopping the propulsion systems. Laser Wolf flew like a Led Zeppelin and smashed into a mountain of supply crates with a robotic roar. Anubis stood with a self-righteous smile, almost 12 feet tall. "Ha! Gotcha! Not so tough compared to Anubis. Ha 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 ha!" he said. He looked down the train just in time for Shield Maiden to battering ram herself right into his knees. He pinwheeled ass over tea kettle off the side of the train and comically landed on the ground with a puppy dog sounding yelp. Shield Maiden panted, jumping off the train to chase him, but he'd already recovered. She jumped right into his arms and he caught her by the shoulders. Slamming her against the side of the train, he snarled at her animalistically. His ears back, Anubis lifted his jowls at her to expose his criss-crossing teeth. Shield Maiden's pupils shrank as he threw back his head and then sank his teeth into her shoulder. Blood splattered and she let out a long scream of agony. He pulled her from the train, spattering blood across the ground, and pounced on her. Rearing up with his doggish claws, he raked at her shield as she desperately tried not to get straddle-clawed to death. Laser Wolf forced himself from the wreckage, flaring his jetpack a few times to clear the debris. Bugs and mucus wouldn't let him. He struggled against the twisted metal, trying to free himself. He was too heavy to jump. No propulsion. Tiny laser guns emerged from all over his body, slicing a path for him to free himself. He saw Shield Maiden fly, skipping across the ground like a stone on a lake. She dug her fingers into the ground, stopping herself in a three-point stance before recovering and running at Anubis again. 3 halos of golden runes and symbols encircled Anubis, and then rushed into a blob of golden energy in his palms. He fired it across the battlefield. Shield Maiden lifted her shield. It ricocheted off of her shield and launched itself into the sky, where it exploded like a golden bomb. The blast wave sent up dust and debris, making the frozen train shudder. The world was bathed in golden light for a few long moments, making Shield Maiden lift a forearm to keep from being blinded. Laser Wolf's shoulder cannon sprang into existence, and he fired its twin beams of heat and light. Anubis leapt back onto the train out of the way, and one of the train cars ignited into an inferno of twisted metal. "No!" Anubis roared. "What have you done?" All three of them stopped to stare as frozen body parts, metal, and wiring went flying in every direction. "You fool!" Anubis roared, lifting both hands. Runic symbols danced in the air around him, and flames began to suppress themselves before they spread to the other train cars. Hissing smoke and the moan of breaking ice filled the air. Anubis gritted his teeth with effort until the flames were gone. Halos of arcane symbols danced around his wrists while he worked. When the fire was put out, he rounded on Laserwolf. "Do you have any idea how many good ingredients you just wasted for me and my whack?" A glittering blue amorphous tendril had emerged from inside the train and wrapped itself around his neck. He pulled at it as it lifted him into the air, kicking and gagging. Shield Maiden took a step back in horror, eyes wide. Laserwolf wheeled towards the back of the train, and then looked back up at the scene. The long tentacle slammed Anubis face first against the train. He yapped like a kicked dog. Slammed him again. His nose splattered with blood. Slammed him again. His eye was bruised closed. Slammed him again. He ragdolled into unconsciousness. The glittering blue tendril tossed him from the top of the train car. He tumbled a few times, his bag of grisly ingredients going in all directions. Then he was lying in a heap at Shield Maiden's feet. Automatically she knelt down to touch his throat. Alive. "What is that?" she cried, backing up to stand next to Laserwolf. The tentacles slowly collapsed into a blob. It morphed, bubbled, shaped, and twisted until it turned into a long worm shape. Then it leaned over the edge and splattered to the ground like so much blue paint. After a few moments it congealed and pressed itself in and in until it became a vaguely humanoid shape. It was very small. It looked up at them with a featureless face. I knew y'all would come for me," it whispered. The voice was female. Then it fell with a slosh onto its face and didn't move. "Is that Gel Girl?" Shield Maiden cried. "Go get the other pieces," Laserwolf pointed urgently. Shield Maiden dropped her shield and ran as fast as she could to the back of the train. When she returned with the metal crate of frozen bits, Anubis was tied up and leaning against the train itself. Laserwolf thumped over the container onto the motionless blob on the ground, his shoulder cannons deployed with a pair of clicks on metal. Turning the power as far down as it would go with a few adjustments, he bathed the pile in a gentle heat. Slowly, the frozen shards began to sweat and melt. Shield Maiden swallowed, watching the warmed bits join the hole. It bubbled and rolled over itself a few times. Then it flattened into a puddle. Laserwolf turned up the heat. It looked like a big pile of toothpaste, really, blue, glittering, and translucent. After what felt like ages, it quivered to life and began to grow limbs. A woman's shape began to emerge. She was skinny, hairless, and had pronounced facial features. Laserwolf slowly dialed down the heat when she looked up at the two of them leaning over her. "I knew y'all would come for me," she repeated weakly, her head turning to one side as she fainted. "I don't believe it," Shield Maiden whispered in awe, slowly sinking to sit on her legs. Just then, a huge group of police came over the hillside and started to descend on the train yard. "Coordinate. I will take her to safety." Laserwolf stood with the drippy blue woman in his massive arms. Shield Maiden nodded and his jetpack ignited. "Gel Girl was here the whole time," he cautioned her. She nodded again. "Shield Maiden," one of the officers arrived, gawking at the steaming cold train. "What's happened? What is all this?" His eyes fell on her shoulder. "You're bleeding!" "Well," she began, turning around to gesture. Anubis was gone. A pile of cut ropes where he'd been. She gave a start, eyes wide. "He's gone. Shit." Thanks for leaving us that clue in the wastepaper basket. He held up a crumpled paper with a date, a time, and a number for coordinates, the one she'd thrown away at the police station. It's good that you trust us, even when the big guy doesn't. Shield Maiden gave an awkward pause. Right. Yes. She said, coughing a little. The next day, the news was talking all about it. Wanda was standing in the kitchen at home, cutting fruit for a fruit salad. Anubis's bite was gone, and she felt as fit as she could be. In a startling victory over the supervillain Dr. Galaxy, heroes Laser Wolf, Gel Girl, and Shield Maiden were able to reclaim a lost train that vanished over 5 months ago, the newscaster said. Telescopes showed us previously that it had been orbiting Saturn, a terrible casualty of the battle against the evil supervillain. Over 200 families have our heroes to thank for finally receiving closure on their deceased loved ones. The TV showed pictures of Laser Wolf, Gel Girl, and Shield Maiden as he spoke. I'm just glad we finally got our baby back. We can bury him and be able to move on with our lives without wondering, one crying interviewee told him, held microphone. Dr. Galaxy's a monster. I hope you hear us, dirtbag. The whole world's looking for you. An angry man pointed into the camera. It's so cool to see Shield Maiden working with the top dogs of the city. She's a rising star now, you know. A trio of teenagers insisted. Wanda smiled and shook her head, dumping a pile of cut-up pineapple into the waiting bowl. She wondered, not for the first time, what made Dr. Galaxy the way he was. He'd learned magic, yes, but why use it for evil? What made Laser Wolf chase him down? How had Gel Girl survived in outer freaking space for 5 months? She'd have to ask when next they met. Earth to Wanda! Come in, Wanda! Jasmine's tone said it wasn't the first time she'd called her name. Wanda flinched, setting the knife down quickly. Is it ready yet? I'm starving! She complained, holding her belly. Yeah, almost. Wanda piled fruit into a big bowl, set up a line of sliced bread and glasses of white milk. Well, look at us being so healthy, Aiko said as they sat down to eat together for the first time in a long time. Wanda passed around the fruit bowl, made sure everyone could reach the bread, and checked for extra napkins. She sat in her chair, waiting and staring at her plate while Aiko and Jasmine got their food first. Burning the midnight oil at the shop, Wanda? Aiko wanted to know. Yeah, Wanda lied. Truthfully, she'd been out looking for Anubis, but there had been no signs so far. It's just been a weird couple of days is all, she said, reaching for some bread when the plate came around. How so? Aiko wanted to know. Oh, you know, weird items people want you have trouble finding, she lied again, thinking of the strange black-furred meta-creature. Or stuff you can't really get a price for. Her mind's eye saw Laser Wolf flying away with Gel Girl in his arms. I got assigned a little sister for my Big Sisters of America work, Jasmine smiled enthusiastically, poking several bits of fruit onto her fork. Some little Indian girl? She touched her forehead with a finger to indicate what sort of Indian she meant. She pulled a picture from her back pocket. Sanvi is her name. We're gonna meet pretty soon. I'm gonna take her to the city aquarium. She likes fish, apparently. It's good to have a hobby when you're a troubled kid, Wanda said, spooning up her own food as she spoke. Her phone suddenly rang. Sorry, she said, picking it up. Could be something for the shop. Wanda touched the answer button. Wanda Summers, Antiques, Collectibles, and Curiosities, she said enthusiastically. Hey, it's me. Darren? She said, frowning at his tone. Hey, Wanda, listen, I've got a thing I've got to go do in L.A. for a week or so, he said, sounding rather grouchy. And that's a bad thing? I'm still mad at you, he said flatly. Wanda winced a little, but said nothing. We've been dating for 2 years, and you can't stand the idea of staying overnight, even though we've been in bed together so many times. Makes me wonder if I'm just a booty call to you and not someone you're in love with. The volume was loud enough that Jasmine's eyebrows climbed into her bangs. You just take what you want and go? Aiko said nothing, but stared at her plate. How can you say that? Wanda said angrily, standing and making for her room for privacy. We've been together for ages, and you've always respected. Her voice faded with distance. The girls watched her go. Awkward silence fell over the dining room for a long time before Aiko spoke. You know what their problem is? She asked Jasmine. He can't express his feelings because he's used to being looked at and not listened to, and she has commitment issues because she lacks a father figure to compare her potential future husband to, Jasmine said around a mouthful of watermelon. Aiko startled, staring at her. What? I pay attention. Juice dribbled down her chin, and she snatched a napkin to wipe it. Right, Aiko said, trailing off. They ate in silence for a while. They could hear Wanda yelling in the other room. Let's not ask for now. It's none of our business, Aiko said to Jasmine. Jasmine nodded a little. Their friend returned after a while, wiping her snuffly nose a little. She was a little misty-eyed. Sorry, I shouldn't have answered the phone at the dinner table, she said, picking up her fork to chase around a piece of pineapple. Maybe we should all take a trip to the aquarium, Jasmine offered, lifting a finger in her aha moment. It's not something you do every day, right? Yeah, I think that'd be nice, Wanda said, forcing herself to smile. Aiko didn't look convinced, but they'd make her come too.